Hi, this morning it's Monday the 28th, and there's been a few updates in the races for Minneapolis, so I thought I would take some time to talk about them. First, if people are in Ward 11, you'll be interested to know that Miriam DeMello has decided to continue her campaign. This was somewhat in doubt after her opponent received the DFL endorsement. So she put out a press release saying that her priorities are remaining the same. She wants to ensure we get the greatest value from our tax dollars and that city government works for everyone efficiently and effectively. And of course, ask for support. And I believe it's her intention to ramp up her campaign and begin door knocking and things like that. So interesting. We'll see how that goes. Her opponent, I think, was kind of cruising towards a uncontested win, and so that's Jamison Whiting. So we'll see where that one goes. Another change in the race is that Billy Menz has decided to drop out of the park board race for District 1. So he put out a press release about that, which I'm a little disappointed to see. I've known Billy for a very long time. We originally were both in the Green Party and ran in 2017. I've seen him at plenty of baseball games, and I've interviewed him on the show, so I just know Billy to be a really stand-up guy, very passionate about the parks. He's been involved in them for a long time. Let's see, I can read you a little bit of his press release on this. He says, because of the what happened at the Target Center and the endorsement, he feels like this is no longer his race. And he stands behind the work he's done. And he will continue to push for system-wide investment in field spaces, indigenous relationship building towards trust, Grand Rounds, missing link connections, and intentional youth programming. But he thinks that people are looking for a more direct challenge to the status quo, and that he really can't exist in that realm because of he feels like he's going to lose who he is and where his strengths lie, and that kind of for his family and his time and his work as a teacher and other things, that this is no longer the time for him. So two big changes there. Like I said, Miriam DeMello is in the race for Ward 11 City Council, and Billy Menz has dropped out for District 1, and I really appreciate the way he's done it. He made this decision before the filing period begins. There's a 2-week filing period from July 29th to August 11th. So very curious to see if anyone steps up for this district. Dan Engelhart currently has the DFL endorsement, and I think he would be running unopposed if no one stands up. And it's always curious to see if any other candidates decide to throw their hat in the ring for any of these positions, particularly mayor. I always appreciate that we run about 20 people for that position, although it makes for a very unwieldy debate stage. So we'll see how that gets handled. And then if you haven't seen it, I thought I would just talk a little bit about my most recent newsletter. It came out yesterday morning, called The Appeal of Socialism. Democrats must reckon with their approach to inequality. I began it with a quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald's short story, The Rich Boy, which he wrote in 1926. Of course, everyone knows The Great Gatsby, but that's turning 100 this year, and I recently listened to a podcast on the New York Times where they were discussing this book because of that anniversary. The quote is, "Let me tell you about the very rich. They are different from you and me." Well, I think probably how people define the very rich has changed a lot since the 1920s. I have in this newsletter a section about the wealth chasm in the society, and I focus particularly on Minneapolis. And the fact that, there are a lot of people angry over wealth inequality, and I think how you view this race might have a lot to do with who you feel is responsible for that wealth inequality, and how you go about changing it. Whether or not you feel like this is something that the city has to address, or if there's larger issues at play, if it's a state issue or a federal issue, or how the government can tackle this when faced with such really enormous corporations these days. The Bezos wedding in Venice, Italy almost seemed designed to inflame this anger. It's hard to look at the opulence of that and not feel like there's just the rich really are living different lives. But how you define rich, like I said, is going to vary by probably your own situation. I have here posted a chart, the source of which is the Census Bureau and the American Community Survey from 2022 that estimates how income breaks down in Minneapolis. They do it by dividing the city basically into 5 tiers, the lowest through the highest. The bottom tier, the bottom 20%, makes a average or mean of $13,349. The highest tier, the 5th tier, makes an average of $286,801. That's the income by family. And then when you look at just the top 5%, this is over $500,000 at $520,744. So huge discrepancy there. It's 2,148% is the amount that the highest tier makes more than the lowest tier. So it doesn't come as a surprise to me that candidates, whether it's for city, state, federal office, are talking about this because, it breeds some resentment if you're in the bottom tiers and look at something like the Bezos wedding and you want changes, you want something to happen to reduce these inequalities. And so in the last convention, and what we saw is that and what we're hearing from a lot of candidates right now is that they feel like it's the landlords who rent them apartments that are responsible for this. Omar Fateh defines himself as a renter. He says, "I'm a state senator, a husband, and then a renter." So that seems to be a top priority for him. That's certainly signaling to many renters out there that he would be their candidate. He says that he wants a city that lifts up working people. And the implication by this statement, I feel like, is that his opponents oppose unions, but that really ignores, I think, some of the other candidates have also been endorsed by unions, just different unions than he's been endorsed by. And I'm not sure what this rhetoric is going to mean on a larger national issues that's going on here in Minneapolis. It's difficult to believe that this DFL party is going to coalesce around a coherent agenda and be able to take the federal government back from Republicans. Of particular interest to me is the fact that Minneapolis effectively only has one party I feel like if there were more viable parties, such as, say, the Green Party or an independent party or a Republican Party or some other party yet to be identified, that we'd see less strain within the Minneapolis DFL itself. And we would also have distinct platforms for each of these different parties, and it would lead to better debate about which of those platforms are best for the city, and people could really have a good understanding of the differences between the parties. I mean, we continue to have factions within the Minneapolis DFL battling with their different visions, and they truly are quite different. So at the convention, State DFL Chair Richard Carlbaum tried to define the party as a big tent in his opening remarks. But that message seems harder to maintain since the Minneapolis DFL endorsed Omar Fateh for mayor. Evidence of this is obviously that the Fry campaign and many others are bringing, I don't know if it's an actual suit or just a complaint or asking for the Fateh and all the endorsements to be overturned because of problems with the endorsement process as perceived by many. They felt like the endorsement process was really not fair and favored particular candidates like Fateh. So it really highlights a growing divide within the party, and on one side there seems to be those embracing the democratic socialist vision, believing that socialism is the fight for true democracy and that capitalism is a barbaric order to be overcome. Those are quotes from the DSA platform. And there's the others who are more pragmatic. They do want to reduce inequality, but they're skeptical of efforts to remake the city government with ideological ambition and symbolic gestures. They'd prefer a city that prioritizes public safety, reliable services, and a transportation network that doesn't make a crosstown trip feel like an experiment in carless utopia. Many are framing this election in terms of a divide between the rich versus poor, renter versus owner, or biker versus driver. For the purposes of this newsletter, I think that a useful division might be between those that are unbending in their idealism and those who expect our leaders to be realistic about what city government can accomplish. So food fight, that's the example I'm using today to kind of discuss a pragmatic issue. The City Council on July 16th received a report that they had requested about the feasibility of municipal grocery stores. This is also a topic that won a lot of points for Mamdani, and I think that's probably what motivated the New York Times to write a piece kind of exploring this in depth, and I like the way they did it. I have a link to that article here in my newsletter, and they really call out some of the challenges with actually implementing this idea. One being retail space. The city would have to go out and pay for store locations. There's logistics, just who manages the warehousing, the distribution, and making sure that you have fresh food arriving on time and in the right quantities. Inventory decisions. They brought up the concept that vegetarians might be upset that they're selling meat at these stores, and whether or not these stores should sell sugary drinks and processed food that contribute to diabetes and cancer. I can see a whole committee structure being set up just to decide what is stocked in those stores. And then there's shoplifting. A lot of stores, such as Walgreens, Target, and other retailers have really struggled with shoplifting. So City Council member Wonesley is a big proponent of this idea. She says the city has to get creative to address food deserts. and that the private market is not meeting the needs of all residents across the city. The Minnesota Grocers Association President Patrick Garofalo counters that municipal stores would create unnecessary competition for small businesses and be costly. He says it's going to be expensive, and the city of Minneapolis just doesn't have the money to be doing that right now. What's troubling about the way these topics get discussed is just how quickly disagreement or even basic skepticism can be met with accusations. Racist, anti-worker, or aligned with big business and landlords. These are the reflective attacks that come up that I think really hurt an honest debate over the merits of these ideas, and they make it harder to build any sort of consensus that might lead to meaningful change. I mean, there's definitely room for serious conversation about how to address hunger in the city and in the county, and how to expand access to fresh food. The city might first look to Hennepin County and talk about what they're doing. They have a lot of, maybe not enough, but have some number of food assistance programs occurring. I have a graph showing the many different food shelves, free food box, and free meals that the county offers. City-run grocery system is likely to face the same challenges as private grocers, and committing to a multi-year initiative that the city may be ill-equipped to manage, it really needs to be looked at closely. It's worth exploring all of the alternatives before the city gets involved in something like this. Finally, I talk about just modern politics. Modern politics isn't so modern. Politicians throughout the ages make promises that may or may not ever come to fruition. I look back to 1925 to see what slogans were being used back then, and that's when The Great Gatsby was published. It was reflected this post-World War I mood, and the slogan was "a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage." That's what, at the time, Americans thought represented prosperity. So it's a century later, but we're still using the slogans. I think one of the things that's really changed since then, obviously, is social media and digital advertising. Now it's very cheap to target specific audiences and then just bombard them over and over again with slogans. And social media obviously truncates all arguments into very few characters. It makes it really hard to have a robust discussion about these when you're limited in characters in a paragraph and people are scrolling through it quickly and maybe catching just a couple of thoughts. But that doesn't mean that people don't take those sometimes misleading social media posts and then leave their homes to talk about them at barbecues and whatnot, and continue to spread maybe misinformation or at least incomplete information. So what I'm hoping to do in coming newsletters throughout this cycle is to try and counter the cynicism that we see with this cycle, with people in general who, and politicians in particular, who make big promises during campaigns and don't often talk about the trade-offs that might come with those proposals. And at least half the residents of the city don't vote, they're disengaged, they don't listen to the news or to candidates or read their lengthy emails, and this disconnection is often rooted in disappointment from hearing too many promises with too little follow-through. So now that candidates are going to have to move beyond just courting delegates for the DFL, they're going to have to go out into their communities and door knock with just regular old voters. They're going to start hearing some things that I heard when I first ran back in 2017 with Billy Menz. We were both Greens at the time. But I often heard things such as, you only come around during elections, the rest of the time you don't care. It doesn't matter who's on the council or in the mayor's office, my life isn't going to change. And it doesn't seem like a fractured DFL is going to inspire these voters. What might is leaders who acknowledge the city's real problems and are honest about the trade-offs their policies are going to require. So that's kind of a summation, a quick run through of that post. I'd like to look a little bit at some of the comments, some of the reactions that I've received. A lot of people have commented. I love it when people comment, and we get pretty robust conversations going on in the comment section. I don't want to say names just for privacy's sake, but I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss the comments that this post, the Appeal of Socialism, received. I'm going to keep the names private, but obviously people can go to the comment section. I encourage them to do so. There's lots of good feedback out there. Lots of thoughtful people have been leaving notes on the newsletter topics, and I really appreciate that. One person says that they love that I'm writing what they've been thinking. A basic tenet of liberalism is that you do not blame an entire group of people for the actions of a few, but that seems lost on many of the defunders and the DSAers. So calling all cops racist, all landlords unethical, all developers mistreat their construction crews, everyone supporting the centrist DFL candidates is a Republican, all wealthy people are greedy elites. Nuance is not their strong point, and if we were to flip that around, which I wouldn't do, we'd be pilloried. I'm not sure how we get beyond this mess, but I'm glad you're calling it out. So this speaks to this tendency to lump everyone into one group, flatten it, no nuance. Another person says that I bring up important points about the challenges of running a grocery store. It's not as simple as just stocking shelves and selling food. The city hasn't demonstrated to me that they can manage anything efficiently, let alone a complex business like grocery stores. And if Minneapolis wants to address food deserts, provide tax incentives to private business. That's as deep as we should go. So that's a idea, an alternative that could be considered. Let's see, another person thanks me for the thoughtful writing, breath of fresh air. Really appreciate that. Wishes that some of these ideas were talked about in mainstream press and circulated to a wider audience. That is one of the advantages of what I'm doing with the newsletter and podcast. You get to expand the conversation in a way that limited space on the regular newspaper doesn't really allow. They said they went to the Ivy Building about history of the Seward neighborhood and its contributions to local politics. Some were great, some not so great, but they were surprised at the limited thinking among the participants. They don't want to learn about other parts of the Midwest and the Rust Belt, about core rot, which a lot of people didn't understand that term. I think I understand it. Core rot being, I would say, our businesses and services, well, probably more focused on the city services degrading over time, is what I'm going to guess that means. Feel free to respond and let me know if I've got that wrong. And that smart people learn from other people's mistakes. Others only learn from their own. Another reader quotes my passage about the fractured Minneapolis DFL is unlikely to inspire the voters, the disengaged voters. Another person says that they're hoping the Minneapolis voters actually pay attention to who is running for city council in the coming election and get off their collective butts and vote in November. It's imperative to unelect the city council far lefty DSAers and replace them with pragmatic moderates such as Rainville, Vita, and Palmisano. By electing at least 4 more moderates, the tide will begin to turn and our city will be able to head in a direction that will actually benefit residents and businesses. Common sense governing is a good thing. And I think that comment kind of gets at the heart of what I'm saying about just some of the inflexible ideology and putting out ideas that maybe sound good in sound bites, but when you actually go to implement them, a whole host of difficult challenges come up. The next person talks about how we see this on the far right, that lying comes fast and easy, the just do or say anything to gin up the base with hopes that not enough will notice the errors or challenge. In terms of the approaches, the DSAers, those in positions of drunken, undeserved power and influence use the same tactics exactly as the worst MAGAs. Okay, so that's a pretty strong feeling about what's happening in the city. They think it goes a long way in Minneapolis. And if these people were running an actual company, they would be fired in short order for all manner of major ethical lapses and complete failure to do their jobs that they were brought here to do. And the only remedy now is responsible and ethically imbued DFL officials and people showing up for the local elections this fall. And then they quote an article from the Star Tribune about Robin Woensley having to recant some claims against Mayor Jacob Frey. I'll have to go and look at that article. Another person likes the post and put up a quote that was recently they found on Facebook about Robin and her discussion of food insecurity and overpriced food in the Dinkytown, Target, Fresh Time, and the lack of options for hunger among UNM students. Okay, and then let's see, another person says that Woensley failed to mention that virtually all the municipal grocery stores are failing. Most have lost millions and lack product on the shelves. We could return to working with our business owners and finding out what they need. It is police protection or perhaps a break on rent. Maybe it's somewhat more educated employee along with some community outreach. Another person says that Woensley's pronouncements are only about trying to get votes from the U of M students, and that the students that voted for her in 2021, where she won by less than 20 votes, those students will have moved on, and they're hoping that I think that she gets beat this coming election. Another person quotes an article from the Atlantic about food deserts and how it's related to the Reagan administration's decision to cease enforcement of the Robinson-Patman Act of 1936, which essentially eliminated price discrimination by suppliers to small retailers. The law is still on the books and just needs to be revived by the executive branch. I do love it when commenters talk about and cite actual articles and provide such great insights. And a couple of people thank them for doing that. Another comment here that they're looking forward to more in-depth look at the proposed special interest platforms of the DFL. It's like we say, do not discriminate. The more we actually do, many members will will just refuse to listen to an alternative idea. They will vilify anyone that has one. This person mentions how we've adopted this idea that intent is everything. In some ways this is good because it allows quicker assistance, but without oversight and proper management, again, we run out of money. Maybe this is an educational issue because management used to keep a discreet or not so discreet eye on their staff to ensure that they're doing the job and not robbing them. Now when you ask a manager why they are not doing the seemingly obvious task, the response is, I don't want to make them feel I don't trust them. So somehow we as a society changed. This was a tool to show the value of an employee that is now only seen as a way to hurt people. I also do not understand the concept of we should not want. Dreams are something to reach for and use to set goals for ourselves. If everything is given and is easy, it loses value and desire along with pride of achievement. There is also the renaming of situations to be more inclusive or rather show more need. It's confusing and actually dishonest. There is a difference between insecurity and need, and we should really start recognizing it. This also kind of turns us all into either victims that do not have what they should or evil, greedy people who have too much. Why can't we start empowering people instead of labeling them? So, interesting comments, a lot to think about. It's really part of the great aspect of writing this newsletter is getting to hear from so many wonderful people. So please continue to chime in and leave your comments on this podcast or on my last newsletter. I'm busy creating one right now for this coming Wednesday. And also, I'm going to start adding, I think, to all my newsletters a Signal address where if people want to contact me privately, if they have any information or tips about anything going on in the city that they want to share that I might follow up on, they can do that through Signal if that makes them feel more comfortable. Obviously, you can always contact me via email as well, or give me a call or text. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.